What's up, y'all? My name is Via, and welcome to my channel where I talk about the ways that you can live the most authentic life possible no matter who you are or where you come from. And in today's video, I'm going to be talking to you about 5 ways that you can overcome adversity. Maybe you're someone who comes from a marginalized background or a disadvantaged group, or you're otherwise just someone who's experiencing a really big setback right now. If that's true, then this video is for you. And the reason why I'm doing this is I've had the privilege of building a pretty good life for myself. Grew up in a lower income neighborhood. I'm a child of immigrants. I went through an early education that was not very good, and somehow still managed to make my way into spaces and people that I never thought I would have access to ever before. Sometimes I think about it and I just think about how different life could have been. But every time something good like that happens in my life, I stop and think about where I came from and remind myself that there are social determinants to someone's success. There are social determinants to someone's quality of life. And oftentimes what makes that a positive thing is having access to some of the spaces and people that I just described, but there are limited seats. These spaces are gate-kept. But that doesn't mean that the lessons from those spaces can't be shared more broadly and at large, which is what I hope to do in today's video and through this channel. So let's get to it. One of the first things that I recognize successful people do is successful people who overcome adversity and change their circumstances, change their environments often. Whenever they're experiencing a stage of growth or wanting to develop a new skill, they don't hesitate to change their environment. And when I say environment, I'm talking about both your physical, external environment and your internal, mental environment as well. So if you know that you live or work in a place that is not good for your growth or evolution, change it. And it doesn't have to be a big thing where you just pick up all your stuff and you move, although that could be helpful. It could be in small ways. It's being really mindful about spaces in your life that don't make you feel good and you know aren't contributing to your growth, and finding a way to replace them with something different. So it could be as simple as joining a free group where people talk about ideas or an industry that you're really excited about. It could be joining a sports team where you condition yourself to know how to do hard things and be really regimented and have the mindset of someone who's a competitor. Or it could be just simple as going outside and sitting on a park bench, having a mental reset. And the other thing that you have to pay attention to is your internal environment as well. So by default, we're often born into families and live in spaces that we didn't choose. And there could be some parts of that space and those people that we really like and some things that we know are not contributing to our growth. We need to replace them with other voices. So that can be new social circles. It could be things like YouTube videos or podcasts or books. The thing that we really need to do is we need to drown out the voices that don't serve us and fill them with voices that make us feel more empowered and more like we're starting to become the type of person that we want to be to achieve the level of growth that we're going for. And I think doing this simultaneously is something that's very important. People throw around the term visualization a lot, and I think visualization oftentimes is purely mental. It's visualizing yourself being the person and being in the place where you want to be and being the person who you want to become. But when you change your external environment at the same time that you change your internal environment and visualize things, you're simulating the life that you want. And I think there's something about simulation that really helps someone go to the next level of where they want to go to. Because if you think about it, people maintain the status quo of the environments that they're in, whether they're external environments or mental environments. And if you constantly change the environments that you're in, you will eventually absorb those things as a part of your personality, as a part of your character. And you start to slowly mold yourself into the person that you want to become, and you address the parts of yourself that you recognize need to be worked on. And if you do this over and over again over the course of your life, then you're slowly reaching the version of yourself that you want to be eventually. And you're doing it with at least friction as possible because you're gradually introducing change by changing your environment. Another thing that successful people do that I've observed is they are rewriting a personal narrative. And what I mean by this is, again, we don't choose the places and the people that we're born into. And oftentimes, when we come into this world, we're a blank slate. We don't have any ideas besides whatever little baby ideas we have when we're first born. But then we spend time with people and we spend time in places that start to add new ideas to how we think about ourselves and how we think about the world. And when we start to develop our own personalities, start and make our own choices, then what we want as individuals could deviate from some of the ideas and some of the beliefs and some of the aspirations from the people that we grew up with. So what I've seen in many successful people is they are actively working on rewriting the personal narrative. They stop and they think, oh, I have this thought about myself, but that's not true, I'm going to change that. They actively sort of reframe who they are over a continuous period of time. And something interesting that I hear people say is make I am or I'm not statements. They make declarative statements about who they are and who they are not. And they almost do it in a way like they're correcting something from their past. There's so much energy and enthusiasm. So it's a really interesting behavior that I've seen people do. And part of rewriting this personal narrative also involves being really aware of your past. Most of the social circles that I'm in are people who identify as coming from a marginalized group or disadvantaged background, or are allies of people who are from those groups. And something interesting that I noticed is people are really aware of their past, and so they don't want to go back there. They know that there are things about past versions of themselves or past histories that was not serving them, and they don't want to go back there. At the same time, they also have a very clear goal and aspiration for who they want to become and what they want their lives to look like. So if you think about what is happening here, you have this push-pull dynamic of someone moving towards a direction that, first of all, they're very clear on. They're very clear about the direction that they want to go on. And you have this extreme momentum carrying someone through life and pushing them through life that helps them grow in the ways that they want to grow, which I think is really interesting. So along the way, they're rewriting a personal narrative. They're not taking the default beliefs in their head at face value. They're investigating them and they're correcting them. If it's not what they want in their head, it's not going to stay there for a long time. So I think that's a really interesting life skill that I've seen some really impressive people in my life do. Another thing that successful people do that I've observed is they like to ask for feedback. And not everyone likes asking for feedback. Not everybody wants to know about themselves. Some people are just fine, but people who I know who just overcome any adversity, who really make waves in their lives or their industries or whatever spaces that they inhabit, who really are remembered, who have this energy about them, they like to ask for feedback and they apply it. So I think we've all heard the term that feedback is a gift, which I think sometimes gives some people a reason to package really poor, unconstructive feedback and say it's a present, which is a really big misuse of the term. But I like the term feedback is information that could be helpful or could not. And the thing about people who are good at overcoming adversity is when presented with information and evidence that proves to them that they are required to change in order to grow, they will change. It's decided. They will change. If they're working towards something and they get some feedback or somebody tells them hey, what you're doing is not going to get you to where you want to go because of XYZ valid reasons, they'll stop and think about it and be like, okay, you're right, so I will change it. And there's no emotion in it. There's not a lot of friction between them hearing that and then making the choice to change, which is a really amazing to see, is just the quickness that someone was like, I know my goals, you provided me with great information that tells me that what I'm doing is not letting me achieve my goals or going to prevent me from achieving my goals. So I'm going to get rid of that and I'm going to change. And they apply that feedback, which I think is really great. And there could be many different reasons why you could be uncomfortable with asking for feedback or receiving feedback. It could be things like pride, feeling like a burden, or distrust in the people or the groups that are giving you feedback. again, if we see feedback as information that we could use or could not, then it's just out there. It's not anything personal. It's just a way that someone might have interpreted us based on any given moment. And it's information for us to consider next time we're in a similar situation, maybe encountering a similar person. And we can pick and choose whether or not we apply it. But the important thing to remember is if it's good feedback that you know will help you grow, then you apply it as soon as possible. Another thing that some very impressive people do is they ask for help. And I know that this can be very hard for people, especially if you grew up in a community of color or you come from a background where you're not used to getting help, or at least not used to getting the help that you need. I know that there can be a lot of distrust that makes someone really uncomfortable with asking for help, even if it's a small thing. So there's like a lot of mental friction that goes into being able to ask for help. Or like people, something that I hear a lot is like, I don't want to bother them, or I don't want to feel like a burden. But you know what doesn't come across as a burden is having a very clear request. If you come to someone with specifically what you want, why you want it, who you want it from, and by when, and you're very clear, then oftentimes someone will help you because you're making it easy for them to help you. And even though it's hard to believe sometimes, there's a lot of people in this world that want to help, because help is a form of human connection, and who doesn't want that? Everybody wants that. If you come to someone with a very clear request and know what you want ahead of time, it's likely that someone will give it to you. And if someone gives it to you, then it's also no sweat. The worst thing you could hear is no. Like, wouldn't it be easier if we just asked for help and stopped wasting all this time trying to figure it out on our own, or beating ourselves up that we can't do something or that we don't know something? But maybe we could just quickly ask someone, shoot someone a text, shoot someone an email, ask someone a question, takes 5 minutes of our time, and they're like, "Oop, here you go. Here's everything you've been looking for. Here's everything that you've been anguishing over all this time." Wouldn't that be great if we could save ourselves from that sort of pain that we do to ourselves all the time? So I think asking for help is really something that everyone should get into this habit of practicing. And the truth is, for every person who has mental anguish around asking for help, there are like 5 other people who have no mental friction asking for help. And guess what? They get it. Like, people give it to them. People get it sometimes. And they get it because they ask. And if they ask and the person says no, then it's no sweat. But it makes life so much easier when you do get the thing that you've been wanting the whole time. The last thing that many impressive people who I've witnessed have with themselves is they have some connection to a higher power. So no matter if you're religious or not, like I personally am not, but you can call it spirituality, you can call it God, you can call it the universe, you can call it a higher power. There is something within really successful people that connects them to something that is beyond themselves. And I see this especially in people who are like entrepreneurs or dreamers or in the social impact space. They have some sort of connection to something that is not in this world, which if you think about it, if you are someone who's like a creative or entrepreneur, or like no matter what space you're in, you're gonna hear no a lot. If you're someone who is building your life from like the very bottom or even the negatives and you're trying to climb your way up, like you're gonna hear no a lot. And what keeps you going during those moments? It's connection to a higher power, no matter what you call it. Being able to believe that there is something that you are striving for that goes beyond yourself is helpful in moments when you're constantly hearing no, when you're constantly getting rejected. And I was thinking about this, how this was a theme that was surprising, but was coming up in some of the conversations that I've had with some really impressive people, because I just like to talk to these people for fun and ask them, why they do certain things and how they live their lives. And the interesting thing is it makes sense, because if your mind is somewhere out of this world, that is the mindset you need to have to create things that don't exist yet. It's the kind of mindset that you need to have to really do something innovative, because you're looking beyond what is available in front of you and you're thinking bigger than that. And that really only comes with having a connection to something larger to yourself that gives you hope, and hope fuels your progress during moments where it's really hard to keep going. And I think that just sustains the momentum for a person having a very successful life that they build for themselves. So those are the 5 ways that I've seen successful people overcome adversity throughout their lifetime. I hope that some of the pieces in this video resonated with you and are helpful. And if so, please let me know and drop a comment down below. And I will see you next time. Peace.